All right, everybody, we are back live, and today we have another interesting stream. As you know, we are we review Muslim apologists and their content basically from the speakers corner of UK to wherever they are located. Basically, online streams as well. We review, and we are Philo Sapience, where religion meets reason. And today with me, as always, is Mahadin. That means we have an English stream. How are you doing, Mahadin?
I'm good. I'm very good. How are you? It's very hot. Other than that, I'm
Oh
good.
yeah, I heard it's a heat wave there, right, where
Hmm.
you are.
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
so yeah, and then I came to know what the temperature is. It's just touching 30 degrees centigrade.
Yeah, something
And
like
I
that.
said, wow. Right.
Yeah.
And I said it's warmer. So yeah, I mean, maybe you haven't lived closer to the equator, basically, right?
Mm.
Or in the deserts of Arabia, probably.
That's right. I mean,
So
we get
yeah,
cold weather most of the time, so it's in terms of British weather, it's record breaking for the year. Not ever in UK's lifetime, of course not. But for the year, these last couple of days is up there as pretty high, if not the hottest day of the year. In the 30s, maybe begin the 32, 31, something like that. Yeah, so for us, it's pretty hot. Yeah, and pretty humid as well and dry. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I think yeah, maybe. See, it's it depends on what kind of weather you're accustomed to, right? And for me, coming to London and living that winter is gonna be a hell, pretty much, right? Because I'm so used to this tropical, weather, basically, right? And so I can probably endure uh, good humidity with 45 degrees centigrade of temperature, but nothing colder than sub-zero, basically, right? Anyway, so what I wanted to do was, the title of this stream is Muslim apologists are afraid to talk to ex-Muslims, right? So what I wanted to do for that was, I wanted to show you something, basically, right? And what I wanted to show you was that, as you know, every now and then I, just try and go to some stream or the other, some Dawa stream or the other, right? And this was a couple of days back. I went to a Dawa stream, and this is, can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
So I went to this Dawa stream. This is Dawa Wise, right? And these guys are champions of Islamic knowledge, or whatever they, or the champion apologists, and they say, you know you can reach to Islam through reason, and we are open to having a discussion, and we can talk to you on all those things, right? And past 3 or 4 streams, they have just kicked me out for no reason, and I have always had I, anybody who has seen me talk basically on this channel knows that my demeanor is, I do get frustrated at times, but my demeanor is pretty soft spoken, and I just don't get into arguments. But I have been on their channels and shown them why their arguments are weak, and then now they have blocked me. They have blocked me from commenting. They have blocked me from uh, they they made me wait for 1.5 hour on the stream before kicking me out, basically, right?
Mm.
So the point I wanted to show is that these guys are so dishonest. They'll, on their channels, they'll shout out that, oh yeah, everybody's welcome, we take the non-Muslims first, and then we want to talk to them, we want to have a conversation, we want to have an exchange of ideas. But as soon as they find that somebody is just getting over them, basically, right, just getting just at least showing weaknesses of their arguments, they stop taking them. And especially if someone who understands Islam really well, basically, right? And those kind of people, they just don't let in their streams, basically. So I waited over there, and then, and from the outside, they'll talk sweetly, but within their, backstage, they'll use really demeaning language for you, basically. So I'm not showing the other screen over here, but they'll really use those kind of demeaning screens. So anybody who sees this has to understand that their reality is something else. They pretend to be something outside on their channels from outwardly, but when you go on their stream and you're on backstage, they'll behave very differently. So yeah, before starting our stream, I just wanted to. Sorry, go ahead.
So you said you don't want to show the demeaning stuff. Why don't you just show it?
I'll show it. It's the language that they use, basically, right? Okay, hold on.
I think I don't know. It's up to your discretion. I don't want to force you. We are live indeed, so I don't know what the
maybe I didn't capture it. Let me check if I captured it.
Well, if you can, let me just put it to you. If you can, I don't think there's anything wrong with exposing.
No, I couldn't capture that, by the way. So yeah. There's this guy on the screen. I don't know if I showed to you, right? Hassan Abedi, right?
Right.
And he used that. He used kind of disrespectful language, but I didn't capture the screenshot for that, by the way.
Okay, you don't have any screenshots.
No, I don't have that particular talk. I just took 2 screen grabs towards the end, basically, right? So okay. Yeah. Anyways, just wanted to highlight that fact, basically, right? So they're not going to take you in, basically, for any of those.
Okay.
All right. Let's now get back to our review of today, by the way, is... All right. Shall we start, Madin?
Yeah, go for it.
A clip of Mohammed Hijab being reacted to by Richard Dawkins on his official YouTube channel.
Madin, you're getting a feedback from your side.
Very strange thing to wake up to. But anyway, in this clip, Dawkins is saying a few things which I want to respond to.
What happened before, say you go for the Big Bang argument?
Well, physicists are debating this. I'm not a physicist, but they're debating it. My point is that they don't know, and I don't know, and you don't know, and it doesn't help to postulate a God that did it.
How do you know that he doesn't know if you don't know? I mean, this doesn't make sense to me. And he does this all the time. If you're an ignorant person, then how do you know that someone else's ignorance is identical to your ignorance if you're ignorant? Having your epistemological cake and eating it as well at the same time, how can you have both? If you're ignorant, then don't be an arrogant, ignorant person. Because if you're an agnostic, which of course you call yourself an atheist. I mean, Richard Dawkins calls himself an atheist, but in reality, he's an agnostic. So he's saying, I don't know, but you don't know as well. But then if you don't know, how do you know that he doesn't know if you don't know? It's arrogant ignorance. Let's just call you what you are, Richard Dawkins. You're an arrogant man because you're postulating what other people do or do not know, but also you're an ignorant man because agnosticism is basically ignorance. That's all it is.
I said a sort of standard rhetorical device, I don't know and you don't know and physicists don't know. Well, it's true that I don't know and physicists don't know. And if physicists don't know, then Piers Morgan most certainly doesn't know. And therefore, although it's correct that I don't actually know whether Piers Morgan knows anything, I'm pretty confident in saying that if the physicists don't know the answer to that question, he doesn't either.
So let's stop pretending to be humble, Mr. Dawkins. You're somebody that does claim to know. You claim to know that if life has arisen in other parts of the universe, it must have been a Darwinian process. You make that categorical claim in your interviews. You make that categorical claim in your book, A Devil's Chaplain. You claim you do know that Darwinism can actually be applied not only to biology, but to physics. That is, in fact, your argument in the God delusion. So you know certain things and you don't actually want to defend them. So isn't it better for you to stick your flag in and say, yeah, I'm willing to die on this hill. I do actually know that design is an illusion. I do actually know that Darwinism can be applied to the universe. I do actually know that God almost certainly doesn't exist. Why don't you just stick to the claims that you've been making over many, many years and fight for them, defend them, argue for them, articulate your responses, rather than just making these short clips in which you're trying to say, well, I'm not saying I know and I'm not sure if other people know. No, you do know certain things. So let's stick to a few things that you've maintained for a number of years. You haven't really changed on these things. Design being an illusion. You've accepted that design is a good research heuristic, but you've categorically said it is an illusion. And you've also stated that design in the physical universe is an illusion, just like we have design being an illusion in the biological world. How do you know that? Why don't you defend those beliefs rather than sidestepping and pretending like you are humble? And we know that you're not. Also, something I was thinking about is that Philip Johnson actually challenged you, and he is the father of the intelligent design movement. In fact, you could say he is the one who's galvanized even your career when it comes to discussions on creationism because of his responses to yourself. Yet, when he challenged you in the early 1990s, you refused to engage with him. You refused to engage with William Lane Craig when it came to the God delusion. You've been making remarks about other intelligent design proponents like William Dembski and misrepresenting him. When you do actually have an engagement with people that disagree with you, like John Lennox, Dennis Noble, Lynn Margulis, you decisively lose. So rather than making these short clips, isn't it better for you to defend your position rather than reacting to YouTubers online? I think that would be a better approach, don't you?
I think so. Right off the bat, I think Sapur often does this. He kind of takes the colloquial way of conversation or conversing and mixes it with the philosophical arguments, right? I won't say this for sure that that's what Dawkins did in his books, basically. I won't say that for sure. And when he says this is what the appearance of design is, it's an illusion, then he's probably saying it mostly is, but he doesn't say that it's, I'm very certain that the probability of it happening other ways is zero. I would highly doubt that. Why I am saying that? Because when he talks about that, his response to, from a scale of 0 to 7, what's his stance on God does not exist? He categorically says that I'm not on 7, I'm somewhere on 6.8 something or something like that. And he's well aware of that at least philosophically he can't be certain of that fact, basically, right? Even in this conversation, when he was having the conversation with Piers Morgan, when he said that, I think it's a way of conversing and saying that when you say that somebody claims that what was before the Big Bang, if certain cosmologists are not aware of what was before that, then chances are pretty high that damn Piers Morgan doesn't know that, right? And when he said that, I think that's what he means. It's not that he's categorically saying that there's no way that Piers Morgan, maybe Piers Morgan is a messenger, right? And maybe there is a God, basically. And 1400 years later, Allah decided to grant this wahi to Piers Morgan. Yes, possible, quite possible. Now you would deny that because your book, that the book you believe in, says no, there can't be any other prophet after Prophet Muhammad. But that's just a belief. Maybe Piers Morgan is the next prophet, and he just doesn't want to say that. He's a silent prophet. He doesn't have to reveal himself to the world. He just got a wahi, basically. He just got a message from Allah, basically, right? And he knows what happened, right? Possible, quite possible, right? Or maybe he is a physicist of some genius level that he just could think through all these problems and came up with an answer, or just randomly got a hold on an answer, basically, right? And knows that. So all these are possible, but what my point here is, it's a colloquial language. come on, Subur, you're damn losing here, but you're smart enough to understand that, right? Sorry, I went on a rant on this, Madan, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, so at the beginning, let's just rewind right to the beginning and let's just listen to Mohammed Hijab again, because I want to just address that as well. Because Hijab was saying something. I just want to remind the audience of what I want to address. Yeah.
Well, physicists are debating this. I'm not a physicist, but they're debating it. My point is that they don't know, and I don't know, and you don't know, and it doesn't help to postulate a God that did it.
How do you know that he doesn't know if you don't know? I mean, this doesn't make sense to me. And he does this all the time. If you're an ignorant person, then how do you know that someone else's ignorance is identical to your ignorance if you're ignorant? Having your epistemological cake and eating it as well at the same time, how can you have both? If you're ignorant, then don't be an arrogant, ignorant person. Because if you're an agnostic, which of course you call yourself an atheist. I mean, Richard Dawkins calls himself an atheist, but in reality, he's an agnostic. So he's saying, I don't know, but you don't know as well. But then if you don't know, how do you know that he doesn't know if you don't know? It's arrogant ignorance. Let's just call you what you are, Richard Dawkins. You're an arrogant man because you're postulating what other people do or do not know, but also you're an ignorant man because agnosticism is basically ignorance. That's all it is.
I said a sort of standard rhetoric.
Yeah. So let's just pause it there. That's right. So I don't think agnosticism is ignorance. Agnosticism is not ignorance. Ignorance is not no. So sorry, let me just clarify. Ignorance. Ignorance. To be ignorant of something is to lack knowledge of something, right? But we don't necessarily mean by an agnostic somebody who is ignorant, right? Yes, agnosticism is not having sufficiently well knowledge of God, but when it comes to stuff like agnosticism, you can arrive at agnosticism from different pathways, right? So you might be, for example, somebody who's not addressed or read or is literate, or somebody who is entertained philosophical or scientific arguments and just simply devoid of any understanding of the concept of God. And there is actually a term for that in philosophy. I think it's called agnostic, like somebody who's just unaware, right? And that's closer to the position of agnosticism, I think. It's like agnosticism with an I. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong with that, if I remember correctly. There is an actual term for that. Somebody who's just not been at all exposed to God-like thinking, right? This could be somebody in a tribe, for example, who has no concept of God, or this could be somebody who has a concept of God but just didn't sit around thinking about it, right? The agnostic isn't necessarily somebody who's ignorant, right? You can be a philosopher trained in philosophical arguments. You can be a scientist trained in scientific arguments and are full of wealth of knowledge and information, and with the greatest of reasoning come to the conclusion that all the arguments are incorrect, or that you can make the argument from both ways and therefore the matter is unsettled. And therefore you're a highly, highly proficient, knowledgeable, thoughtful person with thoughtful thinking on the matter, but come to the conclusion that the evidence is indecisive, indeterminate, inconclusive, or they, whatever, something like that. That person is not ignorant overall, right? Or is not, he didn't come to those conclusions through ignorance. That person will arrive at the position of agnosticism, which is that the matter is unsettled, let's say, and that would be through lots of knowledge. So you can be knowledgeable about all of this stuff without any ignorance. So that's my first contention.
Can I give an example here? Present an example, Madan, for this. Let's say somebody asks you a question, right? Whether the number of stars in the universe are even or odd. And if you said, I don't know, that's not ignorance. That's not an ignorance. Basically, it's beyond your capacity, basically, right? You just can't pick and choose. You can be randomly, you can say randomly, even, right, number. But in a very honest assessment, when you do it, a very honest assessment of this fact, you would say, no, I might be wrong, basically, if I go for an odd number or even number, basically, right? And the best position in this matter, because I just can't get to an answer because I don't have any evidence to support one way or the other. That's why I'm standing in between, and that's exactly the same position for agnosticism. I mean, I'm not saying that there can't be people who just haven't thought through this, and they still call themselves agnostics. You'll always find people like those, just like you'll find Muslims or Hindus or Christians or
But the
people
thing
of
is,
religious faiths of any.
we use the word ignorant in a more of a derogatory way. What we mean by ignorant is somebody who's not attempted or tried. If that's the definition of ignorance you want to use, then which kind of hijab is trying to? So he's doing a semantical rhetorical move
Yeah,
here.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's a semantical rhetoric. Yeah,
we know, because we know, technically speaking, if all ignorance means is that you lack knowledge, then we are ignorant of the fact that the stars, whether they're equal or even in number, we are ignorant, technically speaking. But that is not the colloquial definition of ignorance,
but
right?
ignorance has implied meaning that
Negative
someone
connotation.
hasn't tried his,
Yes.
even tried to
Yes.
find it, basically. And
Yes, that's
the difference between ignorance and what somebody
That's
has
correct.
tried to think through but couldn't reach a conclusion.
Exactly.
Right?
And hijab is capitalizing on the semantical switching. It's like a bait and move maneuver or whatever it's called. Bait and switch.
Right.
Or not even bait
Bait
and
and
switch. Is the bait and switch? I don't think it's a bait and switch. But it's something like that. There must be a word for it. It may be an equivocation fallacy, where he kind of equivocates the feelings that are the negative feelings that the word ignorance generates, and applying it to the technical meaning here. Because he will be technically correct, maybe, to say that agnostics are somewhat ignorant, but it's not the ignorance of the village idiot, right? It's not the ignorance of the idiot who chooses not to engage, interact, and entertain different concepts. It's not the ignorance of those type of people. You can be a completely qualified, sufficiently knowledgeable person, just like physicists are, who may say that the physicists know about the universe more than anybody probably on the living earth, about at least the physical sciences surrounding it. And if they say they don't know, they don't know the matter, they're not saying that they've not read upon it. They're not erudite. They have no knowledge. They
I
have
mean,
no
if
right?
Mohammed Hijab,
Right?
if Hijab makes this move, then he has to say all the physicists who say that they don't know what happened at the Big Bang are ignorant as well, pretty much, right? In that sense, pretty much, right? Because they just can't get to it. Basically, I think that's what he's saying. That anybody who says they can't take up a stance one way or the other firmly are ignorant, basically, right? And point being, some people have really thought through it and then come to a conclusion that we can't take a particular stance one way or the other, right? And that's what it is. And the other thing I have seen, Madan, is most of these apologists, including certain Qaiser Ahmed Raja, I think we have, at the very beginning of our channel, we did a review of his debate with Har Sultan, right? And he thinks that agnosticism means that your uncertainty about you, when you claim agnosticism, you claim your uncertainty about everything, pretty much everything, right? You can't be certain about your existence, you can't be certain about your whether this world is real or not, and all those things, basically. And I'm not quite sure whether that's the classical definition of agnosticism. At least to my understanding, the classical definition of agnosticism has been coined probably 2 centuries back, and that was in response to theism and not as a general term. Probably nowadays it's become more as a very general idea of not having a knowledge about anything or not being able to gain knowledge about anything. But at least traditionally that wasn't the definition that was prevalent. So maybe it has changed slight bit over a period of time. Yeah, so that's what it is. I think it's probably probably more of an equivocation fallacy in a sense that you're
Yeah.
taking the terms differently, probably.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and hijab also then just moving off a little bit of that. Hijab also says something like, if you don't know, then how do you know that he doesn't know, or something like that, as though he's trying to create some very very
The
shyster philosophical sharp logic that is detected. That but if you're saying you don't know, then isn't it the case also that you don't know that he doesn't know? You're saying you know that he doesn't know, but then you just said you don't know. Wait, that's
yeah,
just
it's like yeah,
that's just idiocy, because Dawkins never said he doesn't know about other people's knowledge. He just said he doesn't he doesn't know about some of the fundamental questions about what happened at the beginning of the universe. He wasn't even talking about God. He was talking about what launched the beginning of the universe, if any. What happens before the Big Bang, if any, and that's uncertainty. That's something that is unsettled. He didn't say that he doesn't know about other people and their states of minds. Right? So where's the contradiction? Hijab was making it out like there's a logical inconsistency in Dawkins saying if he doesn't know,
no.
then
I
it's
think
saying that he
Dawkins did
knows
mention
somebody
that
else doesn't know. Right?
if the cosmologists don't know, then you don't know either. He did say something of that sort. Dawkins did. But I'm saying that's a colloquial mention of something that if it's more likely that if the people who are
Yeah,
understanding
but
the
there's no. Yeah,
deepest
that's my point
intricacies
though.
of
That's my
yeah
point though. There's no logical inconsistency. So Hijab was creating the impression that like he was setting up a syllogism almost. Like if you don't know, then how do you
yeah,
know
that's
that?
what I'm saying. He's thinking
That
of it is in a very philosophical manner, and that's what
yeah,
I'm saying. It's not
doesn't
a
make sense,
you don't have to
right?
take it as a philosophical statement. You have to take it as a colloquial statement, colloquial
Yeah, but there's
language,
nothing.
basically,
There's
right?
nothing. No, there's nothing. There is nothing as even as a philosophical statement that's wrong with that, right? For because Dawkins is not claiming that he doesn't know about what physicists think. He is saying that he knows what physicists think.
Right.
It's implied. He
No,
knows what
he's latching. Yeah,
human
that's why I'm
concept.
saying that he's
He
latching on
knows
to that
what is
agnostic. See, he's latching on to that broader meaning of agnosticism. Again, as I said,
no. It's
a
not.
lot
I
of
mean,
lot of
I
these
mean,
apologists think that once you claim to be an agnostic, you just can't have a claim to knowledge. Basically, right?
that's just
That's the problem. That's what he's latching on to. You see
right.
the point, right? And that's a fallacy, I said, right? That's because that's I mean you can have a definition of
So then
agnosticism with
again,
that
I
kind
don't
of a
think.
thing.
Yeah, I don't think Dawkins' definition. So let's put it in real context then, in order to understand it, because what matters more is what Dawkins thinks is agnosticism. First of all, he's never mentioned the word agnosticism. These are things that have been imposed upon him by Subur and
Hijab.
yeah, he's not mentioned anything about agnosticism here. The best that we can do is uncover how Dawkins understands and grasps for Gnosticism is his literature and his public views, perhaps, right? And on that, what we understand for how Dawkins sees agnosticism, I think it's more to do with the scale, Dawkins scale, perhaps, right? And I don't think he's ever mentioned that he's a Dawkins. He's always sorry, he's a Dawkins. He's ever mentioned that he's an agnostic. Rather, um, Dawkins always mentioned that he is an atheist, but he just expressed different levels. So he's never used the word, at least to my knowledge, I don't think he's ever been a self-professed agnostic. Has he ever described himself as an agnostic? It's what they imposed upon him because they consider that to be agnosticism, right? As
Yeah, he
though they,
hasn't said so, but I think we can be fairly confident that he's somewhere in between, agnostic or atheist or whatever from whatever he has said about things in
yeah, but
his books.
let's be clear about what he has said. He said he believes he disbelieves in God or believes God doesn't exist to the same extent he doesn't believe fairies exist and he disbelieves fairies exist. He disbelieves the Santa Claus exists and he believes that Santa Claus doesn't exist. He believes Santa Claus doesn't exist in the same way he believes God does not exist. That's pretty certain, right? And he says that on a scale it'll probably be like a 7, something close to 7, right? I would say that should be even more certain. That should be about 8 or 9, right? With but if he describes it as a 7, maybe he thinks it is.
No,
This
no,
is very
his scale is 0 to 7, right? So 7 is the peak
sorry.
on his scale.
Right. Okay. I apologize.
Seven is the peak on his.
Highest,
7 is
yes.
the.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely certain that God doesn't exist.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there we go. There we
yeah.
go. So is that agnosticism? No, it's not. That's pretty certain atheism, right? Right. If
He's close to 6.8 or 9, something like that.
exactly
6.8.
exactly. So
something.
that's highly certain he thinks God doesn't exist. So this is this is a straw man. This is entirely a straw man.
So this is a claim to knowledge. I agree with you that I agree to your point that this is not an agnosticism. This is almost a certain claim to knowledge. And now you can ask him for why he thinks that. You can ask him for his evidence or arguments for his belief, basically. I'm telling Hijab and Subur and company, basically, right? Go and ask him why he thinks that. But tagging him as agnostic, probably, maybe you can say he's like only 0.5% agnostic, maybe something.
That's not even agnosticism.
Like that, yeah.
That's not even agnosticism.
No, yeah, I'm saying I just want to put a number because he's not a hardcore 7-pointer, right? So, but yeah, I think I see your point basically, right? And
yeah. So so the entire video therefore rests upon an unfounded, misrepresented position about caricaturing Dawkins.
okay, here's Bilal's response. Bilal said, and I was wrong as well. I thought he said he was 6.8. He said he was 6.9, by the way. Yeah. So yeah, that brings him even closer to atheism.
So the entire premise of this video that is built upon, the foundation that is built upon, is on a false premise that misrepresents Dawkins' position that as an agnostic. He's not in between, in the middle, ignorant, not sure. He was talking about the beginning of the universe, that physicists don't know how that happened. But this means if Dawkins, so let's be very careful here. Physicists not knowing is not saying that physicists are not agnostic about theism, right? Dawkins may be acknowledging that some physicists are agnostics about theism. Yeah, again, that's about physicists, some physicists. But then there are some physicists who are atheists, strong atheists, even hard atheists, right? Let's make that point as well, that they're atheist, but they are agnostic about the beginnings of the universe. Is that a contradiction? No, it's not. If you are atheist, strong atheist, in thinking God is not a satisfactory explanation for the beginning of the universe, it's completely legitimate to think that, however, that out of the 10 proposed models, let's say, I'm just making a number up, out of the 10 possible models, we're not sure which one is true of the origins of the universe, right? So we are uncertain as to the origins of the universe, but I can rule out positively with confidence, with atheistic confidence, that God is not one. There's no inconsistency there either.
Right. I agree. Madin, you are probably also even maybe closer to that number, right? 6.9 or something, right?
For a theistic God, absolutely. I'm very. If we're just going from 1 to 7, if we went from 1 to 10, maybe like an 8.5, 9, I would say pretty strongly certain. Like I just don't.
I think so same for me for a theistic God, but for some airy fairy, God, some even conscious thing or conscious being, maybe not, I don't know. Spinozan God, maybe yes, probably, but then again agnostic about those. But for a theistic God, I think again I'm on the same boat pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
so I don't understand. Yeah, by the way, I don't understand this all or nothing matter. If you're agnostic about something, then it fissions out. It turns into a ripple effect where it just makes you ignorant and or not knowledgeable about everything and every matter under the sun. That's a completely gross departure from reasoning. I think. Like seriously, what are you talking about?
No,
If you
I think their point is, and some, I'm sorry, Madhu.
Yeah, because the reason for that is like if you are agnostic about something, like everybody's agnostic about something. If we're using the word agnostic so loosely just to describe something, a state of mind where you are unsettled about a matter, maybe there's 50 split on the matter, or 60-40, where there's not enough confidence to raise it above certainty, or close to certainty, or highly probable, right? Like it's highly probable that let's say when Monday happens, that when Monday arrives
Or the
after a week.
sun goes, I mean, the earth goes around the sun, basically, highly.
I will say, and
or
I will say that's highly certain even. So it's very semantical, because what it matters. It's very semantical, because what different people mean by certain, highly certain, moderately certain can differ from people to people. So somebody's moderate levels of certainty could be 60%.
I think what is the most certain thing that one can say? I exist, probably, is the most certain thing that one can say, probably. Nothing more certain than that, probably, right? And maybe
so.
that's.
Yeah, but some people I know that who are virtually certain still think it's like 9 out of 10, whereas other people would think virtually certain is like 9.9 out of 10.
Yeah. I think that's the difference with the that's the problem with definitions, basically.
Yeah, so we need to. So it's very difficult to therefore understand what people mean by these terms without quantifying it and fully understanding what people mean by it. But what I forgot what I was talking about now. Because we kind of agnosticism. What was I saying? Sorry. Before we start talking about the numbers.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're agnostic about a particular position, right? That you're pretty unsure about it. That could be because of many reasons. It could be because there's a combination of arguments going either way. For example, whether or not coronavirus emerged out of a laboratory in China, right? That you could be, because you might be unsure because you've not looked at the literature, or you've looked into it. There might have been a well-commissioned, financed investigation, and all the scientists come to the conclusion that despite the evidence doesn't point towards any conclusion so far, right? There's arguments from either side, and that could be a form of agnosticism, right? But if you're agnostic about that, does that mean you're agnostic about everything? Of course not. If you're agnostic about who killed Tupac Shakur, the rapper, in the 1990s, or who killed Biggie Smalls, which a lot of people are unsure about currently right now. If you're agnostic about exactly like if you ask a Muslim right now, what would be the solution to cancer? The medical solution. And if you're a Muslim doctor, whether or not you're a Muslim doctor, you would have to honestly say, we don't really know the solution yet. Does that mean you are now agnostic about every single medical matter? What about every single financial matter? What about every single economical matter? What about every single scientific matter on the face of the planet?
Yeah, I think there are, when you read the philosophical definitions of word agnostic, right? You'll always get two definitions usually, right? At least on Encyclopedia of Philosophy at Stanford, right? So Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, basically, right? So there are two definitions. One is that you're agnostic about the existence of God, and the second definition is that whether God exists or does not is unknowable, basically, right? And that's the second definition that I pointed out just now, is what they latch on to usually, and they extend it to almost everything. That when you talk about God's existence, it's not God, but it applies to everything. You just can't know anything. And yeah, I mean, and I'll say that basically, when somebody asks me, how certain are you that you exist in reality? And my answer would be pretty certain, but I mean, I would go on to 100% as well. But then I have no way of discounting something like brain in a vat or matrix or something like that. That's my rock bottom where I say, okay, I have exhausted all my options, and that's why I'm saying that I'm certain that I exist for real, basically, right? But I mean, I just can't falsify these other possibilities, basically. And merely because these possibilities exist, I can't be darn 100% sure of those possible, that I exist for sure, right? For certain, but certain in whatever capacity I can. That's certain, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference. I mean, that's the definition these guys latch on to, right? And then they just project it as if it's applicable to almost everything, right?
Right. So,
Which
yeah, I mean, because if you ask a Muslim, what does Allah's hand look like, or something like that, there's going to be at some point, or what does heaven look like? There's going to be at some point where they're going to say they don't really know. God, I mean, theists do this all the time. There's many things that they are ignorant of about God's universe. There are many things that they're ignorant about God Himself, or the heaven or hell. Right? There's many unknown, unresolved questions about theism that are just unknown, but that you don't then extrapolate that to every other topic, right? So just because you concede you don't know something, or something is unsolved, or something is still a mystery, it's complete non
yeah,
sequitur.
I mean that should imply. Yeah, I mean if his line of reasoning is to be followed, then everybody in the world is agnostic pretty much, right? About
Exactly. So
something
it'll
or
be
the
a
other.
total non
Yeah,
sequitur go from that. Reality is people know certain things more positively than others. People know
exactly.
some things to higher degrees of probability, lower degrees of probability, and some people hold uh, completely middle ground positions on certain things, and other people just don't know anything about it at all. And it comes on a spectrum, right? And this can differ from topic to matter to matter, right? Just because you're agnostic or uncertain about one thing, it's a non sequitur to make the conclusion that therefore you're agnostic about everything.
Exactly. Yeah. True.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here.
All right, let's move on. Shall we make the link public, Madan, and see if
Yeah.
anybody wants to join and have a conversation? All right, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the link public, and if you want, you can join uh, and have a cordial conversation. That's about it. We always have a cordial conversation. We don't let somebody stay in our backstage and not talk to them and throw them after 1 hour of having them wait. This is not how we behave. We behave much better, basically, right? And this is a jibe at Dawa Vice channel, because they have done that quite a few times with me, basically. And for what reason? Because they just aren't able to answer my responses to their arguments, basically, right? They just get defeated and then they start behaving like childish, in a childish manner, pretty much. So yeah, I mean, I'm really disappointed. I mean, they think. I mean, it's a very simple thing, basically, right? If you think your worldview is the right worldview, right, and nobody can, even crack open it, basically, right, and point a hole in it, basically, what are you afraid of? You shouldn't be afraid of it. And in fact, I would say you should be even willing to come onto our channel and have a conversation, right? Because you have got the truth. That's what you claim, at least. Shouldn't be afraid of defending the truth, basically, right? So yeah, I'm highly disappointed in those guys. I mean, they've been doing, Dawa work for what, over 10, 12, 15 years, basically, right? So anybody who wants to join and have a cordial conversation, ask a question. We would prefer if you talk about the topic, but if you have a different question, you can always ask that as well. Maybe point of flaw in our argument or whatever you have, basically, right? But stay on the topic of religion. You just can't ask some random question, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna also make this. Bilal, are you joining to get your medal? So what I'm gonna do is, in the meanwhile, I'll just pin the.
Yeah. So while we wait for somebody to come on, I just want to reiterate and re-emphasize that it can actually be the case that you are unaware or unsure about one particular thing, but also sure about what it's not. Right? For example, let me give you an example that everybody can accept and embrace and understand. Right? We may not know. Let's say there's a murder that happens. We don't know until the criminal investigation has been conducted and a trial has proceeded to its final stage, perhaps, and the evidence has been submitted. We don't know whether or not the person was genuinely guilty, right? But we do know we do know certain things about it, right? We know, for example, an alien didn't come and kill the person, right? We know, for example, that suddenly the earth just swallowed the man and then crushed him, right? We probably even know that a baby didn't kill the victim, right? The chances of a baby killing a human baby, killing somebody, it's a low probability. We probably know that. We might be, for example, stuck in between 2 or 3 very plausible competing theories, right? Let's put it in context. Like, again, the example that I use from the world of hip hop: who killed Tupac Shakur? And there's some theories, right? And some more plausible than others. But then there's other theories that are just completely diabolically insane, right? If somebody came in positive, for example, Abraham Lincoln regenerated from the dead, and his corpse reanimated and came and killed Tupac Shakur, that would be just, no, that didn't happen. And so what I'm trying to say is that you can be unsure about a question whilst also being sure as to which candidates are not real candidates. And therefore, when Richard Dawkins says that we don't know actually what happened at the beginning of the universe, that's not saying that he's contradicting. That's not suggesting that he's contradicting himself on his stance on God, which is that he is sure that God doesn't exist, right? That's what kind of Hijab and all that and them lot are trying to kind of probe at. And look, Dawkins is here openly saying he's not sure about what created the universe. And then why is he acting like he's an atheist? He's not really an atheist. He should be an agnostic. No, it's completely consistent to think that a God model is not a real contender to explain the origins of the universe, whilst at the same time it's perfectly logically consistent to think that we're not sure about what did create the universe. Just like it's perfectly consistent to think that Abraham Lincoln did not kill Tupac Shakur in the 1990s, was being and that's consistent with the fact that we are unsure who actually killed and murdered Tupac Shakur. Can you see that? Is there any logical discrepancy there? No. And I want to emphasize that for our audience because I just thought I would. Yeah.
Right. All right, Martin, let's move on.
I don't think anybody's coming on today.
Yeah, I've made the link public, so anybody who wants to join, challenge us. It doesn't have to. You don't have to challenge us. You could be an ally, pretty much. You can ask a question. You can be, and when I say ally, I think everybody is an ally. Everybody is a friend. Even if you keep a very staunchly opposing view, I think you are welcome. And we are not here to bite you. I think we want to have a very cordial conversation, and we will have a cordial conversation. Yeah, I mean, that's our stance. I mean, you can go back and look at our video clips where we have had some really nice callers and we have had some very cordial conversations. We have always had some of our very regular, callers. And with different views, we have cordial conversations without any problem. Basically, we just disagree and we tell why we disagree, and they tell us why they disagree with us, and that's perfectly fine. If we reach a conclusion, that's perfectly fine. If we don't reach a conclusion, that's fine as well, right? It's just keeping the channels open for a dialogue, right? hear the other side, right? What they're saying, or for everybody else to listen to our side, why we think that Subur is wrong, or hijab is wrong, or the Dawa gangs are wrong, or maybe misrepresenting or outright lying. Basically, I'm not just saying it, willy-nilly. Basically, I'm providing a reason. I told you that I showed you that clip that where those guys were using demeaning language on their own channels. They don't do that. They use very sweet language, basically, right? But behind your back, basically, they'll use whatever demeaning language they can. They'll use pretty much, right? They'll make you waste your time for 1.5 hours, 2 hours, right? And kick you out and stuff like that. We don't do that, basically, right? We are much better. We are much better, much better. Anyways, let's move on.
Standard layman question, and physicists tend to avoid the question. They tend to say there was nothing before the Big Bang, or some physicists do, not all of them do. It's a debatable point, it's a debated point, and some physicists think that you cannot even ask the question. It's like saying what's north of the North Pole to some physicists. But this is way, way above the head of Piers Morgan. So absolutely, I'm totally confident in saying he doesn't know. Of course he doesn't know. An agnostic doesn't know, and nobody can prove that there is no God, but one can live one's life on the assumption that there is no God. And in the God delusion, I devised a 7-point scale from one, let me think, one was totally confident there is a God, and 7 was totally confident that there isn't, and I call myself a 6.9. So I'm agnostic in the same sense as I'm agnostic about the tooth fairy and Mother Goose and the Easter Bunny, but there's no...
Only if I had gone like 30 seconds ahead of where we left off, we would have got the answer. Anyway.
Yeah. So, no, it's kind of consistent with what we're saying, because historically, he has described himself as an atheist. So, but that's what I'm saying. These words are not very useful because we need to understand what people mean by them. And I think there is a massive detachment or a discrepancy between how he uses it versus how other people use it, and how Hijab uses it and Subur uses it. In Dawkins' sense, he's using the word agnostic just to say it's not 100% certain, it seems, right? And because if he's saying he believes God doesn't exist, in the same sense he doesn't believe he believes Santa Claus doesn't exist, which is pretty certain, and then he gives a mathematical descriptor to that to say 6.9 out of 7, which is almost virtually certain. You would bet all your money. Then you're not really agnostic in the traditional sense. So this is again, which is Dawkins' usage of the word agnostic. Then, but in history of philosophy, it was used a bit differently, right? So this is again, it maybe metaphorically, he's using it in his own sort of way. Like, I'm agnostic in the same. It's just maybe a rhetorical move. I am agnostic. I'm agnostic in the same sense that I am agnostic about Santa Claus. Well, then you're not agnostic in the philosophical sense. Then you're just an atheist, right? And that's what I would say to Dawkins, right? You're using the word agnostic in a kind of different way. You're using it in a rhetorical way. Like, I am agnostic. I just, 0.1% agnostic, right? Right?
Yeah,
Which
right.
it's not really like, then I am agnostic as well. I mean, I am 99% sure, for example, that I have a mom. I just, she's in, she might be around, 10 meters away from me. I'm pretty sure that's my mom, right? I'm 99% sure. Well, am I an agnostic because of that 1%? I'm an agnostic. No, I might be using it as a rhetorical sense. I'm agnostic to the same extent. I am agnostic about all these other things that I'm certain about, and then list a series of things that I'm certain about, right? So you're not really agnostic in the classical philosophical sense.
True.
And sorry, just before I finish, just before you move on, and Subur and Hijab should have picked up on that. Like, he's not really saying he's agnostic. He's actually using a rhetorical trickery of the language to say I'm agnostic in the same sense I'm agnostic about tooth fairies, which isn't agnosticism at all.
Right. All right, Madhu, moving on.
No evidence for any of those, and there's no evidence for God either.
Okay, so you're again going into that shell of, I am not really making these claims. I'm just saying I don't know on this particular scale. I'm here. But why are you there? Why are you 6.9? You are 6.9 because you believe design in the biological world is an illusion. You believe the central argument that you make in the God delusion is a valid argument. So you do know these things. So let's not pretend you don't know. And when it came to say something like the origin of the universe, you're saying, look, it's like saying what's north of the North Pole. We don't actually know if it's even comprehensible for us. Well, why don't you say the same thing about the origin of life? When you were pushed about this, you actually pointed to Crick's idea of directed panspermia. So what's going on here? Why do you selectively choose when it comes to people responding to you, your particular position, and your other positions, you just ignore them? Why didn't you say, yes, I do say the universe gives us this idea of design, but design is an illusion, the same as the biological world, and I'm willing to defend this point? Why don't you have a debate about it? Why don't you have a discussion about it rather than reacting in these short clips? Anyone familiar with you?
Yeah, I think what Sabur is doing over here is dragging Dawkins down to an arena where he thinks he'll have much more leverage, basically, right? And that the video that he showed is not talking about panspermia or evolution or any other thing, pretty much. Now, Sabur has his own right to point to all these things, but not not juxtaposing that thought with this particular video where the only talk that's happening is about uh, origin of the universe, right? I mean, you can say that this is inconsistency in his stance, perhaps, but you need to then ask those questions separately to Richard Dawkins as to why his stance on those things is the way it is, and is it really is his rating on that Dawkins scale 6.9 due to all these reasons. And once he does that, yes, he can go ahead and criticize his stance on that, and go ahead and ask those questions why he's not debating those head of the intelligent design, whatever the Phillips name. I don't even remember what his name was, basically. Ben Phillips?
Yeah, because no, the answer is simple though. The answer is simple. He's not an agnostic. Dawkins is not an agnostic. Yeah, he's not really saying agnostic there. So
first claim is wrong, but even if, let's say, he's saying they are atheist, whatever he is, and he's bringing what is your stance on those things, your rating is based on those things, I think he's through and through an atheist, basically, right, as you said. And to understand why his rating is there, you have to make a separate video asking those questions, not lump him with this video, basically. That's what I'm saying. That's a dishonesty, basically.
Yeah, I mean, so what Subur says is that, why aren't you so unsure about, like, I don't understand what Subur is doing, actually, to be honest. He made an argument about
I think he wants to drag Dawkins down to an arena which is his field. He thinks at least his field, which is evolution, right? And what he does is he picks evolution from people like, what's his name? What are those scientists? Discovery Institute guys, basically, right? Intelligent design guys, right? William Dembski and all those other guys, right? And even what's his name, Dennis Noble, right? So he always finds these intelligent design guys who support his hypothesis, basically, that a god exists, and just uses them as the master of their fields, basically.
That's what I'm trying to kind of get at, because I'm not sure why Subud is talking about all these other issues like transpermia and then the beginning of the universe, being like asking the question of what happened, what's north of the North Pole, and then equivocating it with evolution. He seems to be, in his head, he thinks that there's a live debate, an open debate, just like in physics, like or something like that. Or he thinks that why isn't Dawkins so sure about? So when Dawkins make the argument that asking the question of what happened before the Big Bang is like saying what's north of the North Pole, Subur actually says, why doesn't he apply that same thinking to evolution? And I'm just thinking, why is Subur even saying this?
Yeah, I mean he
Why
I mean he doesn't
why-
even understand this difference between the amount of
Yeah.
evidence for one theory versus the other theory, basically, right?
Yeah, I just don't understand why is he saying this exactly. So
Yeah,
physicists may be thinking that the question of what happened before the Big Bang is equivalent to what is north of the North Pole, because probably because it's nonsensical. That's what they think. Now, whether they're right or wrong, I'm not assessing that. But that's the reason, right? The concept of time dissipates. It stops. So therefore, it doesn't make sense to say before. So it's a linguistic, philosophical, whatever you want to call it, issue, it's an issue. It's a definite issue.
no, it's
Right?
it's an issue both philosophy. You're transitioning from physics to metaphysics, and which is a huge issue because we can't even speculate what metaphysics is,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah. So
And that's the cusp. And here with the evolution, it's not the same equation at all.
yeah, there's nothing like that in at least in. So again, he's unclear about what he's talking about regarding evolution. But what are the origins of life? Why doesn't he say the same thing? Because there is no such metaphysical quandary of that similar
Exactly.
nature, right? We're not going beyond time, right? So there's no north of the North Pole problem, right? There's no philosophical inanity involved, right? Whereas with the
Exactly.
Big Bang, there is an issue different. These are substantially and qualitatively different matters, and they raise different
Exactly.
questions. So what's the issue? So isn't Super able to understand this and grasp this? These are different
That's
sort
why
of.
that's what I said. I mean, okay, I won't say that thing again because I think the first time said it, I said it in probably now to come to think of it, I think it was inappropriate of me to say that. I shouldn't be attacking somebody's personal looks per se. By the way,
I'm
yeah.
laughing. I'll tell
So
you,
I take my words back. By the way,
I'm laughing because you've been so Jesus Christ on the stream right from the beginning. Like,
I am like that, right?
feeling anything. You're like, you're not feeling it. You just, I've been listening to you getting bored at your world peace statements. I was like, and I'm pretty sure it's the reason behind the audience members not disappearing now. like like I'm just finding it funny, right? I was gonna say don't include me in this peace message because I am not trying to make peace.
Yeah. No, no. I think everybody who has listened to us like 3 episodes or 3 streams knows who's the most combative of
Yeah,
us four
there
or
has to be a
three,
good
right?
cop and a bad cop, right?
So we have a huge spectrum from one side to the other, basically.
Yeah,
I'm more of an agnostic.
exactly. I'm saying there has to be a good cop and a bad cop in any peace. Otherwise, it's boring. Like imagine if we were just all like peacekeeping,
Peace
kumbaya,
treaties everywhere, right?
kumbaya
Yeah.
singing, people. Has anybody heard of? Do you know what kumbaya is?
No, no. What is
You don't
it?
know what kumbaya, or it doesn't matter. It's like a Western concept, maybe. I think it's actually it's actually an ethnic concept, but it's talked about more in the West. Kumbaya is like a peace loving song. You want to quickly search it if you want. You can play it for our audience if they're interested. Kumbaya. You can minimize the screen, yeah. I mean, just for a little bit of a breather for our audience from philosophically heavy stuff. If
Oh,
you
so
guys,
it's an African American spiritual something, right?
yeah, you might play it. You want to play it. There's nothing wrong about it. Don't worry. I can assure you. There's nothing hanky panky going on or anything like that. Don't worry.
I think we might get a strike. So I think it's better we don't.
That's straight away. Do you think they're watching us? We're not in the Matrix. They're just watching. Even I think it'll be
No,
fine.
no. It's not about them watching us. It's about
Automatically,
YouTube policy, right?
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
See,
All
that.
right, you can play a Kumbaya. You can play a Kumbaya rehearsal song by somebody else, like a non-unpopular person. There's so many clips of Kumbaya being sung.
See, those are all 7 million views, 8 million views. So I think it's better to.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, what is that song? I'll just show you.
Right.
show you the screen basically, right? I'll show you the screen. We don't want to get any strike whatsoever. I think everybody has already done a Google search by now. All right, moving on.
Yeah. See, Philo is way to buy the book and wants to, whereas
See, we
happy.
don't want a single strike. Anyways, we have very high visibility, right?
Yeah.
Or shall we finish this?
Yeah, let's go.
Your work, River Out of Eden, for example, in which you're speaking about morality, you're actually speaking about how DNA has basically given us this illusion of morality, and there is no right, there is no wrong, and there is no God. Again, categorical statements. But when it comes to you defending your position, you go into this agnostic shell, this protective shell, as if you're some sort of reasoned, rational person who's just skeptical about other claims. No, you are categorical about certain claims, so you should defend them. So I hope in this short video, the viewers have seen that you don't actually defend your position very effectively. In fact, you're somebody who hides from public discourse. Now, I've written a book called Dawkins Deselected, The Extinction of New Atheism. And I've actually interviewed many of your opponents, including Alistair McGrath, Keith Ward, and intelligent design proponents. And one of them who you actually responded to is actually also somebody, Douglas Sachs, who I interviewed on my channel. So if anybody...
Yeah, I think as you said, somebody having an agnostic position on a certain matter does not mean that he can't exclude certain hypotheses or certain answers from within that question, basically, right? Categorically. I think you already gave an example of that, right? Very simple example and a very stupid example would be somebody saying that, what is the is the number of stars in the universe gonna be an integer or not? You can pretty categorically say, okay, I don't know. What is the number? You can pretty categorically, remove a number like 1,000,000.5 or something like that, right? You may not know whether it's an even number or odd number, but you can certain answers you can pretty confidently remove. It can't be a real number, basically, right? It just can't be. So, saying answers like you are pretty sure that God doesn't exist does not have any bearing on the answer to the question what happened at the time of Big Bang or before Big Bang, basically, right? Not knowing that answer is perfectly and being agnostic about that question is a perfectly fine stance, by the way. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I think, oh, sorry, I want to add something to it?
No, I was going to say, yeah, so like Subur, is talking about, he's pretty categorically certain about design being an illusion, pretty categorically certain about morality not being true or something like that. These are different topics, and he has different. Dawkins has different reasons for those things, and what Subur is doing. He's equivocating again from one thing to another thing. Dawkins has separate stances on all of those things. They're interconnected to some extent, of course, but his position has to be more fully fleshed out before we understand the reasons behind those things. But the things that he touches upon, they are completely consistent with Dawkins' position. Dawkins says again, he's an agnostic to the extent that he believed, to the extent that of 6.9. Similar to his belief on Santa Claus not existing, similar to his belief that fairies don't exist. Yeah, which is pretty certain. This is consistent with, therefore, thinking that there is no divine designer. And more broadly, if Dawkins also is 6.9 or whatever for a general designer, then that would also be the case. There's no inconsistency or contradiction. So what Subur is trying to point out that, wait a minute, in one breath, he's trying to say, Dawkins is saying he's unsure, he's an agnostic. In another breath, he's saying he knows that it's not design, right? And first of all, even just taking as plainly as that, there's no inconsistency. because Dawkins, we've already debunked that. The fundamental beginning mistake right at the beginning, which is that they mischaracterized Dawkins' position, because Dawkins is using the word agnostic differently, maybe even wrongly, maybe in a way that philosophers should scold him. Maybe. I'm not saying it that's certain. I'm an agnostic.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. Basically, he's not even, and nobody takes him as a philosopher. By the way, I mean, he might be a face of new atheism. I think Madin, and probably we have already talked about this as well quite a few times. I mean, wherever, I mean, even though he's probably the most prominent face of new atheism or whatever, I don't think anyone of us, or even very well-read philosophers consider him to be a philosopher per se, basically, right? And don't take any of what he said. He's probably a brilliant scientist, maybe, and maybe a brilliant writer, popular science writer, you can say. But he's nowhere close to, you won't go to Dawkins to understand, philosophical nuances of things, basically, right? Or the definitions of what agnostic means or atheist means or whatever, right? So to just, equivocate, as you said, right? I mean, what Suburu is doing is just sheerly equivocating whatever, definitions he's using. So yeah, anyways, I think we should move on to our next review now.
What I would say is that I do need to go. Actually, it's not for any reason that's important. Actually, I just realized my battery's down.
Oh, okay. Then we can then finish the stream then, basically, yeah.
Yeah, because I physically won't be able to continue because my battery.
All right, no worries. I think then that's good. That's good. We did finish our one of our clips that we wanted to. The next one we'll do probably later on, at some other point, probably.
Yeah.
All right. So then, yeah, I don't know. Nobody has joined as well, so we're good. No, we have a guest, basically. All right. Welcome to the stream, Abdul Ghani.
Abdul, can we just say that we can only entertain you for maybe 2-3 minutes? And if it goes beyond that, then you'll have to speak to Philo.
Hi, Abdul. Can you hear us? If you're on stage, by the way, so we can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself, and then can you hear us? If you're saying Abdul Ghani, if you're saying something, we just can't hear you. You're on mute right now. Okay. He's dropped out. So yeah, Abdul Ghani, maybe if you want to join and have a conversation, please do join our next stream. Right now we are just about closing. And before we close, I'll just run through our regular thing. Basically, we have an English only channel as well, which is youtube.com/ you can see it under the banner, on the banner, basically, @Unveiling Faith. And please like, subscribe, and share, and spread our channel wherever you can. Basically, we talk deep philosophy, some surface level philosophy as well. We refute the arguments of Muslim apologists. Basically, we point out where the flaws are and where they have been dishonest, and you'll see us point their dishonesty more often than not from now on, because we need to do that as well. And if you are able to support us any which way, especially financially, if you can, there is a Patreon link. You'll see it, patreon.com/ @Philo Sapience, and also not but /Philo Sapience, and also buy me a coffee link, which is buymeacoffee.com/ Philo Sapience. And you also can support us via super chats, memberships, or whatever you have on YouTube, basically, right? So that's about it. But if you can't, the best thing is to comment after the stream is over. just let us know what you think, what we can bring in the next stream, what you would want us to, bring for the streams, not just the next stream, but future, as a future course, what we should bring on, what we can do, maybe a 20-minute, video review, then open the stream for guest callers or something like that. Whatever you have, just put your opinions forth, basically. So that's it for today, and hope to see you next time. That's probably gonna be maybe tomorrow, or if not tomorrow, then next weekend. So thanks.